Donald Trump didn't just light a match. He dropped a damn flamethrower on the global trade system. In a stunning escalation of economic warfare, the Trump administration has threatened tariffs of up to 70% on foreign imports, not just on adversaries, not just on China, but on allies, on Canada, the country that shares our longest border, our closest cultural ties.
If you're done watching corrupt elites rig the system and leave you behind, subscribe now. If you want real talk, raw truth, and zero spin, this is your channel. If you're ready to fight back, hit that subscribe button and stand with us.
Our most integrated supply chains. And Trump wants to tax them like enemies. Why? Because his ego brews more easily than a banana in a shopping bag. These tariffs aren't just numbers. They're a nuclear bomb dropped on the cost of living. American families will pay more for cars, food, appliances, medicine, you name it. All because one man thinks bullying our allies will make America great again. What it's actually making. America broke, isolated, and distrusted. Canada strikes back, with brains, not bluster. While Trump barks, Canada builds. Enter Mark Carney, the soft-spoken assassin of Trump's trade delusions, a former central banker turned economic strategist. Carney has zero interest in cable news spats or Twitter tirades. His focus? Long-term resilience, diversified trade, and a united Canadian front. Instead of retaliating with chaos, Carney orchestrated a silent counterstrike, securing new trade agreements with Europe, strengthening partnerships with Asia, and reinforcing Canada's domestic industries. He turned Trump's tantrums into an opportunity to reduce Canada's dependence on its erratic southern neighbor. And the Canadian people? They're on board. Boycotts of American goods have surged. Cross-border shopping has plummeted. Canadians are spending more at home, investing in local businesses, and traveling within their own borders. Trump unified Canada in a way no Canadian politician ever could. Tariffs are taxes, period. Let's be crystal clear here. Trump keeps claiming other countries are paying these tariffs. That's a lie. Tariffs are taxes paid by American importers. Those costs get passed straight to American consumers. So when Trump slaps a 70% tariff on Canadian aluminum, it's not Canada that's hurt first. It's American manufacturers, American construction firms, American beer companies. It's your wallet that takes the hit. Carney's response? Expose the lie. Quietly, effectively. His office put out the data, point to the numbers, and let the facts speak for themselves. In contrast to Trump's emotional chaos, Carney weaponized calm, logic, and truth. Carney's coalition of the rational. While Trump alienates the world, Carney builds coalitions. Canada is deepening economic ties with the EU. It's expanding exports to India. It's finalizing energy deals with Japan and South Korea. In less than a year, Carney's administration helped redirect billions in trade flows away from the U.S. and toward more stable partners. Why does this matter? Because global markets are watching. Investors don't want volatility. They want consistency. And between Trump's erratic tweets and unstable trade policy, America looks more like a banana republic than a beacon of capitalism. Carney? He looks like the adult in the room. And investors are taking note. The Canadian dollar is gaining strength. Canadian bonds are increasingly viewed as safe havens. And the global perception of Canada as a stable, mature economic power is soaring, all while Trump throws tantrums at rallies. Inflation by sabotage. Let's talk inflation. Trump claims it's Biden's fault. But inflation's roots stretch back to the Trump-era trade wars. Tariffs on steel, tariffs on Chinese goods, tariffs on Canadian cars. All of it injected price shocks into the economy. Trump tried to control trade like a mob boss. Pay up or else. And it backfired catastrophically. Mark Carney understood that economic complexity requires nuance, not noise. He didn't just reject Trump's playbook. He rewrote it. Instead of playing a game of threats and bluster, Carney emphasized stability, predictability, and policy rooted in evidence. Guess what? That calms markets. That reduces volatility. That reassures business leaders. While Trump was hosting shouting matches with his own advisors, Carney was writing the quiet doctrine of 21st century economic leadership, a tariff wall built on sand. Trump sold the American people a lie. That tariffs were a tool of strength, but behind the bluster, the numbers tell a different story. U.S. manufacturing has lost momentum. Farming communities in the Midwest, once key Trump supporters, suffered devastating losses from retaliatory tariffs. Soybeans sat rotting in silos. Export contracts evaporated. Even the famed Rust Belt saw fewer jobs than promised. What Trump called leverage was really just a punch in the gut to the very voters who believed in him. Meanwhile, Mark Carney was quietly insulating Canada from this chaos. Not by posturing, not by ego, but by policy, by building cross-sector resilience, shoring up food security, expanding clean energy investment, and creating new trade corridors that didn't require kissing the ring of Washington. While Trump weaponized economic instability, Carney created economic antibodies. And here's the kicker. While Trump talked America first, his actions often left Americans last. Prices rose, jobs didn't return, relationships soured, and what was once the world's most stable economy became synonymous with a circus tent run by a ringmaster who didn't understand the animals he unleashed. National unity versus narcissism. Trumpism thrives on division. Divide immigrants from citizens, urban from rural, allies from enemies, red from blue, and most dangerously, fact from fiction. Carney, on the other hand, understands that real leadership unites. When the tariffs hit, Carney didn't run to the cameras. He ran to premiers, to mayors, to industry leaders. His goal wasn't to scream. It was to coordinate, to find consensus, to forge a national response built on solidarity, not slogans. What came out of that effort was nothing short of remarkable. For the first time in decades, Canadian provinces came together around a common economic strategy, not because they were forced to, but because the threat of Trump's economic warfare made unity a necessity. While Trump eroded America's foundational alliances, NATO, NAFTA, the WTO, Carney and Canada were building something new, stronger, smarter, cooperative, resilient. Let's dig deeper into the mechanics of Trump's trade war. Every time he slapped a new tariff, foreign governments retaliated, not with troops, but with counter-tariffs that targeted U.S. industry strategically: dairy, agriculture, autos, aerospace. The losers? Not China, not Canada. Americans. Factories in Michigan and Wisconsin were forced to downsize. Small businesses reliant on imported materials saw costs skyrocket. Farmers in Iowa lost decades-long export contracts. These weren't accidental casualties. They were predictable outcomes of a policy based on political optics, not economic logic. Carney knew better. Rather than react emotionally, he mapped out targeted countermeasures that minimized domestic damage and maximized international leverage. That's strategy. That's leadership. That's how you use economics not as a weapon, but as a shield. From bluff to collapse, the end of Trump's economic credibility. Remember when Trump bragged that trade wars are easy to win? Fast forward, and the U.S. economy was left with bloated deficits, crippled trust, and strained alliances. No deal with China. No improved NAFTA. Just USMCA, a rebrand with marginal gains. No restored manufacturing base. Meanwhile, Carney positioned Canada as a principal player in a post-Trump world. The digital services tax? Smartly introduced, then paused, using it as a bargaining chip without triggering retaliation. Energy exports? Redirected. Strategic minerals? Protected. Industrial subsidies? Calibrated to boost domestic innovation without violating trade norms. By the time Trump realized he was bluffing against a man who doesn't play poker, it was too late. The markets had made up their minds. Carney had become a reliable signal in a world of Trump-induced noise. The politics of rage versus the practice of reform. Trump's politics thrive on grievance. His trade war wasn't a strategy. It was a tantrum, a way to punish those he deemed disloyal. Allies, institutions, even his own people. Carney's politics, by contrast, are driven by reform. He understands that a nation's strength lies in its capacity to evolve. That's why he championed interprovincial trade liberalization. breaking down barriers within Canada to increase GDP without ever picking a fight abroad. That's why he supported skills training, green investment, and small business credit, building the bones of a new economy, while Trump was still stuck yelling about steel mills. It's not just about economics. It's about vision. Trump promised a past that never really existed. Carney is building a future grounded in reality, reason, and resilience. Where do we go from here? If the story of Trump versus Carney is a tale of two economies, then it's also a lesson in the power of leadership style. One man governs by ego, the other by evidence. One clings to power through fear. The other builds strength through trust. One sees tariffs as victory. The other sees policy as partnership. And here's what it all comes down to. The U.S., under Trump, saw the world as a threat. Canada, under Carney, saw the world as an opportunity. Trump's tariff tantrums will fade. His sound bites will be forgotten. But what Carney has built, strategic alliances, economic self-reliance, a culture of cooperation that endures. Because history doesn't remember who screamed the loudest. It remembers who led when it mattered. And when the storm came, Trump threw matches. Carney built shelter. What happens when the bully gets dethroned? If Trump believed tariffs were a masterstroke, real-world evidence shredded that illusion. As American consumers face painfully higher prices on everything from new cars to lettuce, the infighting in Washington grew louder. One day, Trump promised sweeping victories. The next, industry groups begged for relief. Senators from his own party quietly lobbied exemptions behind closed doors. The system groaned as faith unraveled, not just in policy, but in leadership. In contrast, Canada under Carney moved with purpose. No panic, no shouting, just decisive action. Trade deals were quietly amended. Supply chains were assessed and reinforced. Domestic stimulus was calibrated to help sectors hit hardest by U.S. retaliation. And instead of seeking an ego boost, Carney delivered economic steadiness. And that speaks louder than any speech. A people's movement, not a political crisis. Trade wars aren't just tracked in legislative sessions. They're felt in diners and driveways. In Minnesota, Michigan, and the Dakotas, farmers who voted for Trump suddenly found themselves facing a deluge. Losing soybean export markets, rising fertilizer costs, and stalling credit lines. Back in Canada, something different happened. People didn't show up at protests. They showed up at malls and farmers markets. They bought Canadian steel. They booked domestic vacations. They traveled by rail instead of plowing through border crossings. Their message was loud and clear. Sovereignty isn't just for governments. It's for families and communities too. While Trump bashed Canada as the enemy, Carney trusted the Canadian people, and every business that stepped up responded in kind. That kind of unity isn't built through threats. It's built through shared purpose. Trump's self-sabotaging showdowns. Every time Trump raised the tariff ceiling, he was playing with fire, but always pointed at his own house. American auto manufacturers paused expansion plans. Construction suppliers scrambled for global sourcing. Universities that relied on international students counted tuition losses. The White House would cheer hardball tactics. But the economy showed up with a different report card. Carney watched. He didn't gloat. Instead, he capitalized. Canada introduced policies that encouraged manufacturers, American and international, to invest north of the border as a hedge. New industrial zones opened. Subsidies for clean energy and EV battery plants increased. Agricultural aid stabilized farm incomes. These moves didn't just offset losses. They primed Canada for future competitiveness the world over. This was no reaction. It was rock-solid repositioning. While Trump staggered from one policy blowback to the next, Carney was drawing a blueprint for Canadian economic independence, turning tariffs into leverage. When Carney imposed Canada's countermeasures on U.S. goods, it wasn't just retaliation. It was precision. By targeting sectors like aluminum, agri-exports, and auto parts, industries deeply tied into U.S. economic interests, Carney sent a message. Canada's economy won't bend. Retaliation wouldn't cancel jobs. It'd reallocate them. Profit centers would shift. Investment decisions would be recalibrated. Canada's challenge to Trump was concise. Disrespect our market, and we have options. Real options. That kind of calculated pressure doesn't corner a country. It realigns priorities. It's the difference between brazen aggression and intelligent deterrence. When markets speak, U.S. retreat and Canadian assent. Market signals don't lie. When credit spreads widen for U.S. industrial bonds, when manufacturing growth slowed, or when capital started flowing north, investors sent a message louder than headlines. They were shifting trust. And guess where trust was growing? Hint, not in America. Canadian equities quietly outperformed. The loonie strengthened. Foreign direct investment ticked up. Global financial media started praising Canada's caution. They framed Carney as a new post-Trump economic model. Stable, strategic, sovereign. Meanwhile, in D.C., Trump doubled down on blaming others. It's not me, it's the Fed. It's not tariffs, it's China. The world watched, shrugging. Meanwhile, Carney emerged as a voice of reason in a global chorus hungry for stability. And markets responded by rewriting portfolios, shattering the myth of America First. America First worked as campaign rhetoric. But as tariffs infected all corners of the U.S. economy, the myth unraveled. The vision of a resilient, self-sufficient America confronted the harsh reality of global interdependence. Trump's trade war exposed a fundamental truth. Unilateralism isn't strength, it's isolation. Canada, under Carney, embraced transition, not retreat. He promoted an economic pivot, not wedge politics. He championed Paris-aligned climate investments, digital infrastructure, indigenous-led resource development, and educational excellence. None of it dramatic, but each piece reinforced a vision. Canada wasn't rearguard in recovery, it was forward-thinking. As alliances shifted, Canada redefined what sovereign strength looks like in the 21st century: open, partnered, principled, and prepared. Showdowns made of steel, not bluster. Trump's posture promised bargains in public spectacle. But Carney's posture promised something deeper: partnership without submission. Steel deals were reactivated via trade minister calls. Auto parts tariffs were haggled down through regional diplomacy. Digital taxes remained a bargaining tool, not a battlefield divorce. Canada didn't seek dramatic victories. It pursued strategic outcomes. Canada didn't scream. It closed deals. That quiet confidence rattled Trump supporters who believed only spectacle could hold power. Canada showed that restraint isn't cowardice, it's competence. Attention turns to Washington. Will America be a partner or pariah? For the first time in a generation, global actors asked, is it safe to do business with the U.S.? When Canada jumped ship to diversify, joining CPTPP, doubling down on EU ties, expanding Asian outreach, it wasn't just win for Canada. It was a wake-up call for the world. Investors, governments, universities, they all reevaluated how to engage with America, not because they wanted to leave, but because Trump made it necessary. And Carney used that moment to drive home a simple message. Alliances built with you also need mutual trust. Once trust falters, partnerships pause. And Canada's response showed how to advance, quietly and effectively, while others adjust. Shaping the legacy, the quiet revolution that outlived a loud presidency. Trump's presidency will be remembered for noise, chaos, and rash policy. His tariffs, if left unchecked, could have reshaped global trade frameworks for decades. But Carney's Canada turned that threat into a catalyst for irreversible change. By the time Trump retreated or moved on, the world had shifted. U.S.-Canada supply chains were rebalanced. Trade corridors were rerouted. Investment trusts were reformed. And a new economic architecture quietly took root. This wasn't Trump stops Canada. This was Canada uncoupled itself from Trump. The real test isn't in speeches. It's in what remains. Tariffs gone? Great. But systems left in wreckage? That's the cost of demagoguery. Carney's vision, in contrast, built back better. Canada doesn't need Trump's approval. It has partners and a plan. It doesn't need his permission. It has momentum and meaning. Now, it can simply let its markets, its classrooms, its factories, and yes, its exports speak the truth. That leadership rooted in clarity, competence, and coalition can outlast the loudest of blusterers.